Hey, I'm Ted Santos. I'm with Straight Talk. We are the talk show that is made for men by men, except ladies. You never want to miss us. And we are the talk show that addresses relationships. And we always do it from a man's perspective. And today, well, I really had something on my mind. It's Saturday. And I was thinking about a book that I'm working on. And even before I get to that, so ladies, some of you seem to think I'm bashing you, but just think about it, right? If you go to your doctor's office and the doctor tells you that your diet is horrible, your diet is killing you, it's hurting your body, you need to change your diet because your diet is causing high cholesterol, high blood pressure. It's causing you to become overweight. Your diet is doing all the things that you don't want your body to do. It can even affect your mind, the way you think. So if the doctor tells you this, is your doctor bashing you? So when I'm addressing relationships, you can almost think that mindset is like the diet that you feed your relationship. Everyone has a mindset, and that mindset feeds into the relationship. And if it is not giving the relationship the nutritional value that it needs from the man and woman, you're going to have a very deficient relationship for one or both people. So to say that you're doing things that are unhealthy for you, how could that be bashing you? Ever. And if you think about some of the facts, most marriages fail, right? I know people want to dispute it. First year of marriage fails in the first year. 40% of first year marriages fail, right? So the big picture, most marriages are failing. It's over 50%, 53%. So that's a problem. So now imagine if most marriages are failing, think about relationships that never make it to marriage, never make it to any kind of permanent commitment. Most relationships are overwhelmingly failing. So if most relationships are failing, then what are people doing or not doing that's causing relationships to fail? So I want to talk about something that we've been taught to look for in a relationship. So in working on this book, one of the things that I am going to address in the book is this idea of chemistry or connection. So I want to talk today about why chemistry and connection is never going to make your relationship work. Ever. Never, never, never. It just isn't. And you know what? I know we've all been taught that you have to have chemistry, you have to have a connection, and without chemistry, it doesn't work. And I hate to say this, but if that's all you can look for, that's a sign that you are really incompetent about what it takes to make a relationship work. And since the overwhelming majority of relationships fail, I hate to say it, there's a lot of incompetence out here in the world. And that's all over the world. So today, and I do this sometimes, I go to YouTube and I listen to other people talk about relationships. And you hear some good stuff. You do. And you hear some people that have a mixture of good and bad stuff. And there are people who are really honest. I mean, there are some women who do a great job of just being brutally blunt with women. And I don't know if the women on YouTube have gone through a string of bad experiences. You just hear some great advice. You hear great advice for women and men. And I hear it from both men and women. But I also hear a lot of things that are like wives' tales, right? So somehow they just get passed down and no one actually checks it, right? So if I say 53% of divorces fail, people want to fact check. Well, where'd you get that from, right? Where are the facts? When someone tells you you need chemistry in a relationship, you don't fact check it. You just say, oh yeah, that makes sense. So it's like our heads are filled with so much misinformation that it's no wonder most relationships fail. And they will continue. So before I start talking about chemistry, and I'm going to bring this full circle, I want to talk about something that is absolutely essential to discuss. And I think as a society, we don't do a good job of addressing it. And not only do we not address it, it's often promoted, especially to women, but really it's promoted to both men and women. And the thing that I want to talk about is fairy tales. And both men and women's lives are affected by fairy tales. And I mean like the real fairy tales, like Cinderella and Snow White. And the knight in shining armor and the prince. And the woman who kisses frogs and he turns into a prince. So, just first off, if you're reading your child these fairy tales, you are setting them up for failure. You're setting them up to have failed relationships. And if you really think about it, as parents, don't you want to see your children succeed? Like, are parents actually raising their children to sit and be alone and have 14 cats? Is that what you're raising your daughter to do? To be alone? Perpetually? You know, at one day, parents generally die before their children. So you die and your child is sitting there alone, undesirable, because you read them fairy tales and reinforced it over and over and over. You have to find your prince, your knight in shining white armor. Those are stories. They're fairy tales. And they should be made illegal. Not only do fairy tales hurt both men and women, Hollywood is based quite a bit on Shakespearean stories. The, Fatal Love. Romeo and Juliet, they both died. And this idea of chivalry. And we have so many women who believe chivalry is what a man is supposed to do. And if he fights for my honor and he dies for me, that was so romantic. So when you combine Shakespeare, Hollywood, and fairy tales, what you get is a programming, some will call it indoctrination. What you're programming little girls to believe is that if you're Snow White, for one, Snow White, you're living with 7 guys. Come on. 7 men and 1 woman. She must have been given a lot of snow jobs, Snow White. But let's not get distracted. Snow White lives with 7 men, and some evil witch is jealous of her. So Snow White dies. And what does she do to get the prince? He kisses her. So then you get Cinderella. The mean stepsisters make her work. And something magical happens, right? There's a theme. Magic with Snow White, magic with Cinderella. And now Cinderella magically has a coach that takes her, or the Rolls Royce of coaches. And she's got the beautiful dress. She's the, she's the life, she's the woman every man wants at the ball. And then she has to go. And the prince just finds her because the shoe fit. So all this magic, we're teaching girls to believe things magically happen and they literally have to do nothing. You can be dead and the prince is going to come along, kiss you, put a shoe on your foot, and all of a sudden you're qualified. We're teaching girls and women that they have zero responsibility to make a relationship work. That the prince is going to come along, save them, and they live happily ever after. We don't teach girls and women how to make things work. And how do I know? Because when you ask women what is their role in a relationship, what do you hear? Sex. And then in their mind, well, I'm doing you a favor by having sex with you. I'll cook, I'll clean. But what does it take to make a relationship work? In these days, women are not even being taught to cook. They're taught to get a career. So how does that make them valuable in a relationship? Your job does not make the relationship work. There may be some attribute, some intellectual capacity that you have by having a job, except if you don't know how to contribute that and collaborate with your husband or significant other, what are you offering them? Collaboration is important. Corporations have a problem getting people to collaborate. We have a society that doesn't collaborate. Most people are divorcing. So back to the fairy tales. And I'm going to connect this to chemistry. So whether it's a fairy tale or even in some cases, the woman is told she has to kiss a lot of frogs to find her prince. Well, if you're meeting a lot of frogs, then I'm going to ask you, where are you at? Where are you hanging to be kissing frogs? Right? You must be a frog yourself. If you're down by the pond looking for men, if you're where frogs are, what do you expect? And I saw an interesting video on YouTube. Very attractive woman, I think she was British, and she was doing an Instagram live with a guy who probably most would say was not attractive. And he was rather brash, he was a little crude, and she kept telling him, you're being a little crude. And then he, at some point, showed her he was in a jail cell. And he put pointed the phone at his cellmate, and this woman who was attractive, and her English was like the Queen's English. She spoke English very well. This woman all of a sudden went from telling a guy who was being crude to all of a sudden she started flirting as though she found these men attractive in jail. Now, if you are finding men in jail, yeah, you're going to kiss a lot of frogs. Right? How does an attractive woman who appeared to be well educated find a guy in prison to be attractive? So is this something that women get out of fairy tales, that you find the guy who you think is a misfit and you're going to fix him up and make him better, and but he's a wild animal inside? Is that really what you all want, is just the wild beast? You don't even really want the prince. You want to marry the prince because he has resources and you'll feel powerful. But you want the frog or the guy in prison because he's untamed passion. So what do you really want? And what are you really responsible for to have that? Do you have the untamed passion yourself to bring to the relationship or the bedroom? And then we get Hollywood. Hollywood has the music, evokes emotion, and you feel good when you meet this person because they do and say all the things that are out of the fairy tales, that are out of the movies, out of the Shakespearean. He read me poetry like Romeo. And you wonder why your relationships don't work. So, when we speak of chemistry, I need you to think what's really, really going on and why it doesn't work. Why relationships, why people who meet and initially have great chemistry end up in a failed relationship? Because they know nothing about discovering compatibility. And I'll give you the punchline. To know who's compatible with you, you have to really know about yourself. There are things that every person, there are things you know about yourself, right? And there are some things that you may not fully understand. And then there are things that you don't even know you don't know, and you don't know them. And you really don't have a roadmap to get to the areas where you don't know. Primarily because we don't adequately invest in developing ourselves so that we can discover that. Because when you do discover those things, it makes it much, much easier to know who's compatible with you and who's incompatible. And it has nothing to do with chemistry. However, since we depend on chemistry, you have to look at what's feeding, like something's being fed like an input. Like I said, the word programming, you're being programmed to know what is compatible with you. At least you think it's compatible, but it's only compatible based on a feeling. And if your whole relationship and marriage is based on feelings, I promise you, the divorce court is filled with people who had feelings. What do you do when Monday you don't feel good about the person? They didn't say all the things that is supposed to be said in the fairy tale or in Shakespeare's story or Hollywood. They didn't do all the things to make you feel good about yourself. That's not that person's job, to make you feel good about yourself. If you don't feel happy, if you don't feel great about yourself, if you feel sad or angry, that is what you bring to the relationship. That's your table. And no one can make you feel anything. Not happy, sad, angry. No one can make you feel anything. Nothing. I don't care what they do for you. You might think it made you happy. But here's what I'm asserting. When you get programmed with all these fairy tales and Hollywood stories, you now have like a computer readout. And you meet someone and you're doing a complete readout. Does it match for this? Does it match for that? And when you see certain things match up, all of a sudden your brain, it becomes science. You become a science lab. And all these neurochemicals start firing off because I recognize this and I recognize that. And this is the thing that I heard from a fairy tale. And this is the thing that I heard from a movie. And these are the things that I've heard so much that I'm supposed to like. And when a guy matches up physically, verbally, all of a sudden your brain starts firing off good feel chemicals. And you think it's chemistry. And all the person did was match up with what you've been told in the past. But as a human being, there's no idea if there's compatibility. Like if love is your foundation, you're in trouble because that means your relationship is based on, the foundation is based on a feeling, and feelings can just change or wither away. That's not a powerful relationship. Now, if your whole foundation is based on chemistry, in chemistry, the basis for chemistry is what you heard in a fairy tale or in a Hollywood love story or some Shakespearean or some poetry, you do not have a relationship. I'm here to tell you, that is not a relationship. Accept it for what it is. Now, if it turns into more than that, that's great. Except the fact of the matter is, most marriages fail. Right? So we, at some point as human beings, we have to start thinking, what we're doing isn't working. And doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, is considered insanity. So why are we still using the same method of chemistry when it doesn't work? Chemistry is based on the things that you already know, your presuppositions about what's supposed to work and not work, and that all has been fed in like input into a computer, and it does a complete readout to tell you if this man or woman matches up. And the matchup has nothing to do with you personally and what it takes for a relationship to work for you. It has nothing to do with you personally. It's just all the good ideas you heard from a fairy tale or from Hollywood. It has nothing to do with you personally. I watched some reality dating show once on television, and the woman said, I want a guy who's well-read and well-traveled, and they matched her up with a guy like that. And she had a terrible date because the guy was talking about all the places he'd been to and the books he'd read, and the woman traveled nowhere and she barely read a book. And by the way, about 43% of college graduates never read a book again. So here's a woman who was not well read, traveled nowhere, and she thought she was supposed to want a guy who was well traveled and well read, and she was not compatible with him. She had nothing to offer the guy. I mean, she learned quickly that this wasn't a match. So what I'm saying is, what you call chemistry is not chemistry. It's just a matchup with how you've been programmed to see what's good and what's wonderful and all the beautiful music and all the beautiful feelings with your bedtime fairy tale stories that have you believing that is a real man. He's the white knight. He comes in shining armor and he rides his horse and he's going to save you. He's going to save you from your mean stepsisters. He's going to save you from the mean old witch who gives you a poison apple. And he's going to come along and kiss you and take you away from your 7 men that you've been hanging out with. So, chemistry is a myth. It does not make your relationship work. It does not. All the research, all the successful marriages, when you look at a demographic, you look at millionaires who have a very, very low divorce rate, their marriages are not built on fairy tales and chemistry. It is built on compatibility. And when someone is really compatible with you, like whether you call it values, how you both see integrity, communication, money management, the way you raise your children, where you want to live, travel, things you read, your mindset is compatible, you will have an affinity for that person. Now, it may seem like chemistry, but that's when you have someone who's compatible with you, based on you, not based on some book, some fairy tale about Snow White or Cinderella. So what I'm saying is, as long as you are depending on chemistry, I'm sorry, that is what you call immaturity. Those are childhood fairy tales. In a lot of relationships, men and women, especially here in the US, are really built on immaturity. I already did a video about why men are more mature than women. And we really are. And this, what I'm talking about, is one of the big reasons, because women are still thinking from elementary school about the prince. I mean, these women are 30, 40, 50 years old and still talking about Prince Charming. And how many of you have ever been educated as a princess? How can you be a princess if you have 5 children by 4 different men? Is that what a princess really does? Or are your parents just passing you around so that they can merge with 4 different kingdoms? Prostitution, huh? So, I like having these kinds of conversations. And ladies, it's not to bash you. I really want to see your relationships work. It's going to be extremely difficult for you to make a relationship work if you're basing it on Cinderella and Snow White. And if you're kissing frogs, stop going to Rikers Island or whatever penitentiary you go to meet men. Not a smart move. So I have a Facebook page. Connect with me on Facebook. The Facebook page is called Straight Talk. We love having conversations like this. Lots of men and women in there. And lots of men and women learn a lot about themselves and the opposite sex. Join me on Sundays for my talk show, Straight Talk. Call in. Love to hear your comments. We always have very provocative discussions. And share this video. If you want to help women get out of their own way, and you want to kill off the myth of the fairy tale syndrome, share this video. Share it with your sisters, your mothers, your grandmothers, your girlfriend, your wife. Share it. Make sure they watch it, and then talk to them. Discuss this. People need to talk about this as couples to make sure you have true compatibility, not this false love of a feeling. Feelings don't make relationships. They don't. So like my video, subscribe to my channel, share the video. If you don't like what I said, I want to hear why. Dislike it. And join me. Connect with me on Facebook. I'll get you into our Straight Talk group. And I look forward to speaking to you all about the next topic. Take care and goodbye.